face your worst fear. Become one with the darkness.
Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Batman Begins. So the last couple of videos I've talked about on this channel were all Superman related, and because I enjoyed James Gunn's take on Superman so much, and I really love the comic book feel of that film, it got me back into reading some comics, which I haven't done in a couple of years actually. I'm currently reading Peter Tomasi's and Patrick Gleason's run on both Superman Rebirth and Batman and Robin, which I highly recommend to anyone who hasn't read those yet. They're fantastic reads. I'm still in the middle of them, really enjoying them. And because, you know, Batman and Superman are so close in the comics, there's a lot of comics of Batman and Superman, you know, teaming up and all that stuff, I wanted to go back to my favorite superhero, which is Batman. And I've talked about Batman on this channel numerous times. I'll make sure to mention all of those videos in the description below for anyone who wants to see them. And I decided to revisit a Batman movie that I have now come to the realization is probably my favorite Batman movie in terms of a Batman origin story, and that is Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. A movie that I think is very unfairly overlooked, and I think the exact same thing can be said for The Dark Knight Rises, which I think is genuinely underrated and a fantastic movie, which I can see myself talking about later in the channel. And that is because The Dark Knight was one of those movies that when it came out, it like changed the world. It changed people's perception on what a comic book movie could be, on what a Batman movie could be, on how intimidating and sinister and crazy the Joker could be. I mean, Heath Ledger, his performance in that movie is one of the most, I mean, everybody said it at this point. It really is one of the most impressive, amazing film performances like ever. Like, it really is one of the greatest performances of a villain in the history of cinema. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that. Every time I rewatch The Dark Knight, which for years, whenever I was in a Batman mood, I would always return to The Dark Knight. In fact, I need to take a couple of years before I revisit The Dark Knight again, because I've seen it so many times, like so many times. And that's because it's an amazing movie. And Heath Ledger's performance, in particular, is what takes that movie to another level. But admittedly speaking, it's more of a Joker movie, and outside of that, it's more of like a crime epic movie than it is an outright Batman movie. That's one of the reasons why it's really good, but at the same time, it's like, if you want to dive into what makes the character of Batman so compelling, then The Dark Knight's not really the best representation of that. But, you know, obviously The Dark Knight is the second film coming after Batman Begins. Batman Begins already gave us all that great characterization of Bruce Wayne and Batman, and then The Dark Knight Rises would further that examination of the character in almost a deconstructed kind of way, which is why I really love The Dark Knight Rises. And The Dark Knight, you know, the one in the middle, is the Joker movie, because you can't have Batman without the Joker. It is his ultimate arch rival and nemesis, and you know, I think The Dark Knight is a brilliant movie. But I do think there's an argument to be made that when it comes to the examination of the character of Batman and Bruce Wayne and the two parts of that character, I think Batman Begins to this day is probably the best movie that explores that and does so in a really meaningful and incredibly entertaining way. I will say that my favorite Batman movie overall, like live action, and this is kind of a hot take depending on who you talk to about this, because it's a very divisive movie, but Matt Reeves' The Batman. I mean, that movie was kind of the Batman movie that I've always wanted. And I talked about that on this channel, but that was a really early video that I would kind of like to redo in the future. But that's my favorite take on Batman. For completely different reasons, which I'll go into in a future video, most likely. But Batman Begins, I think it is my favorite of the Nolan trilogy, like for the reasons that I said. And back when I did watch The Batman for the first time, which I watched it in 2023, I waited a whole year to watch it because I was really burnt out on superhero movies and I wanted to do other stuff. I finally got around to it, and then after I watched that movie and loved it so much, I was like, you know what? I want to do something I've never done before, which is watch all of the Batman movies, starting from the Tim Burton movies, going to the Christopher Nolan movies and watching them in order, which is something I'd never done before. And by the time I got to Batman Begins, what was crazy to me was the realization that this was the first live-action Batman movie that gives us a proper origin story of the character, which we'd never got in any of the other Batman films before. And the way Christopher Nolan went about that was so fascinating. Like, he wanted to show Bruce Wayne as a little kid, you know, his parents getting killed, that traumatic event, how he meets Jim Gordon when he's a little kid, and Jim Gordon tries to comfort a little Bruce Wayne, and how that impacts him later on, which we see in The Dark Knight Rises, which is a beautiful bookend to that relationship. And then from there, we see a young Bruce Wayne traveling the world, trying to find himself, and he ends up being trained by Ra's al Ghul, or as they say in the movies incorrectly, Ra's al Ghul.
Though father's name was pronounced Raish, not Raz. A common mistake.
And seeing Batman being trained by ninjas, which makes, you know, perfect sense for Batman in terms of his particular skill set. And it's like, wow, I love the way that Christopher Nolan went about that, because I can guarantee you we probably would have never gotten a Batman movie that would have been that in-depth, with showing the training of Batman, the early life of Batman. One of my favorite parts of the movie, because the movie kind of goes in and out of order, it's, you know, rearranged differently. There's a lot of flashbacks. There's a flashback to where, you know, Bruce is coming back from college, and he's coming back to Gotham for the trial of Joe Chill, who's the thug that killed his parents. And that whole section of the movie is so amazing from a character standpoint. I mean, Christian Bale is such an incredible actor. I think everybody knows this, but I feel like his performance in the Batman movies, you know, they often get overlooked. Like I mentioned with The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger, his performance is so larger than life and so captivating that it's hard to even give credit to any of the other performances in that movie in particular. But Christian Bale is amazing in all three movies, and especially in this one, where we see a young Bruce Wayne who is tormented, who's dealing with all these emotions, who wants to take revenge and actually wants to kill Joe Chill, but somebody already beats him to it, and that kind of reshapes who he is as a person, and he realizes that he needs to work out his demons, and then that's how he meets Ra's al Ghul and gets trained by them. And, you know, he first believes in the cause that the League of Shadows have about, you know, bringing justice in an unjust world, but then realizes that they cross a line that he never wants to cross, which is just killing people. And that's something that some Batman fans just don't understand, like the people who love the Batflick Snyder take on Batman, which I think is a horrendous take on the character. It's really crucial to the character of Batman that he doesn't kill. It's both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. It's what separates him from a ruthless vigilante or anti-hero like the Punisher, for example. It's what separates him from all of the villains that he goes up against. That's the line he doesn't cross, and it can be a weakness at times, but it's also his greatest strength.
Your compassion is a weakness your enemies will not share.
That's why it's so important. It separates us from them.
And that's something that Christopher Nolan really, in particular, understood more than any of the other Batman movies. And so then it's like 40 minutes before we actually get a proper introduction to Batman. And when Batman does get introduced in this movie, that scene, you know, where he's going after Falcone's men, which, by the way, the movie keeps calling him Falcone. It's Falcone, but that's something that the Matt Reeves movie would correct, thank God. But that introduction where he wants to go after Falcone, you know, he's the big drug criminal kingpin of Gotham. He's going after his gang, and the way he's going, like, stealthily and sneaking up on him, and the way that's filmed, oh, that's so great. And then, of course, there's the main villain of this movie, one of my favorite Batman villains ever, Scarecrow, played awesomely by Cillian Murphy. And that goes into what the main theme of this movie is, which I think is perfect for Batman, and that is the theme of fear. You know, how fear can transform and shape our lives, and the way that we combat fear is by going through it, by facing it directly. I mean, that's how Batman chose to become Batman. You know, we see in the beginning of the movie, he is a little kid, he falls down the well, he sees that there's an underground cave with all these bats, they attack him, that gives him his lifelong phobia of bats. And then later on, you know, because he wants to conquer his fear, and he also wants to give fear to the criminals of Gotham to prevent what happened to him that night when he was a child to anyone else ever again, he's like, that's the symbol I need to take on, is that of being something I'm afraid of and instill fears into my enemies. I'm going to be a man bat. Batman. That's a better name. That's what makes this movie so special and it's probably why we never really need another origin story in terms of a live action origin story on Batman ever again, or at least not for a long, long time, because this movie really perfects it. And we see the entire character arc of a little Bruce Wayne growing up to be Batman, and it's completely satisfying. We get awesome scenes. We get the whole the whole last act of this movie, which, you know, he comes face to face with Ra's al Ghul again. Played awesomely by Liam Neeson. But of course, Bruce didn't know that was Ra's al Ghul. He thought the other guy was Ra's al Ghul because Liam Neeson introduced himself as Henry Deckard, who's an actual character in the Batman comics that did help train Batman. But this movie pulls a little twist where it's like, no, I'm actually Ra's al Ghul and I protect my identity, and, you know, we're here at Gotham and I'm going to fulfill my promise of destroying the city because it's a plague on the planet. Him, the League of Shadows, and the Scarecrow are all working together to put this fear toxin into the city to rip it apart. I will say, though, like, you know, as awesome as that third act is, there are some flaws in the movie. And we'll get to one of my bigger flaws, which, you know, there's the final confrontation between Batman and Ra's al Ghul. During that confrontation, Gordon is gained access to the Batmobile, which is an awesome scene, and he wants Gordon to kill the tracks to prevent the train from going to the heart of the city where the fear toxin will get even more amplified and destroy all of Gotham. And he's successful in that, and then the train is about to get derailed. Ra's al Ghul is like, you don't have the stomach to kill me, and Batman's like, I'm not going to kill you, but I also don't have to save you, and then he flies off. That's more or less basically killing him. I mean, honestly, you pretty much killed him. Like, I'm not going to complain too much about that because it's an awesome scene and it's really satisfying, but at the same time, you kind of killed him. As far as like the Nolan movies as a whole, I honestly don't think any of them are perfect. I think they're very, very close to perfect. In fact, when I looked back on my Letterboxd, I gave them all the same rating of 4.5 stars out of 5. All nearly perfect, but I have little gripes with each and every one of them. I'm not a big fan of the Christian Bale Batman voice. It's less gruff in Batman Begins and gets even more cartoonishly gruff in the later movies. That has aged terribly, and anytime Batman talks, it's hard to take seriously. And that really stands out in The Dark Knight, because everything in The Dark Knight is so awesome. But once Batman starts talking, it's just like, oh god.
This city just showed you that it's full of people ready to believe in good. I remember this roof. I left a piece of gum on one of these ledges. Alfred, fly me in some Big Red. No, double meat. Big Red is too spicy. Reminds me of when my dad died. Cinnamon is the flavor of parental loss.
But overall, as far as superhero trilogies go, the Christopher Nolan trilogy is still the high mark of superhero trilogies, you know, Batman or otherwise. It's still like the pinnacle. It's absolutely incredible. And Batman Begins, I think, is probably my favorite, just because, like I said, we've never gotten any other version of Batman in live action form that explores his origin story as thoughtfully and meaningfully as Christopher Nolan does, and that theme of fear and how that plays such an important part of Batman's character. And it's just, and on top of that, it's fun. It's genuinely a fun movie. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of humor moments in the movie that works really well. It's really well balanced. Everything is so well done, and I just absolutely love this movie. And for years, I always skipped over it and just went right to The Dark Knight. And now I think I'm going to be, you know, revisiting Batman Begins as a standalone movie in the future, because it's such a great, awesome movie. But I will probably talk about the other two movies in the trilogy because they're amazing, and I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on all of them. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Batman Begins. I really, really love this movie. I do think it's my favorite of the Nolan trilogy, but I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on Batman Begins? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Is it your favorite of the Nolan trilogy? Is it your favorite live-action Batman movie, period? Mention it in the comments below, and as always, thank you guys for watching.